Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. And today we have Mr. John Watton. How are you, John?
I'm good, Andrew. Good to be here.
Good to see you. I know it's been a while, but you know, it's every attempt to get amazing guests on. You just got to be resilient and keep going at it, and then eventually you get the time in people's diaries. Because I know it's a bit of a crazy world these days. So welcome to the G&T Sessions. And I suppose to kick it off, as we have had quite a few different types of guests actually on. But I didn't know until today. I thought you actually had some superpowers in a certain topic, which we will come on to in the kind of software world. But I didn't know that you were a rock star as well. So, you got to confess. You got to confess what the hell is going on behind you.
Yes.
Or is it an image? Or is it just like it's a gift?
So, and I will get into my career, but I've mostly been in marketing in technology companies. And what has really kind of played well is this interest behind me, which these are all synthesizers. Some are sort of modern recreations, but some are what I guess now, depressingly for me, are called vintage synthesizers. They're from the early 80s, some of them, which is the period in which I used to play in bands when I was at school, and I used to record my own music. And I have that sort of creative side to me that I think has played very well to my marketing career. But no, I've always had an interest in music. Started off playing, doing the piano lessons and playing in the orchestra. I played the clarinet, would you believe it? But
did you?
But sadly,
not the recorder, not the recorder.
No, the clarinet. And I'm a sort of cliched story in some kind of diary of a musician in that I actually sold my clarinet to buy my first synthesizer. So I moved over from sort of playing in the orchestra to playing with some friends and doing stuff like that. But yeah, never was that good or that successful to make money from it. So it's definitely a side hustle, a side interest.
So I should call you John Newman, shouldn't I? Or John Ewer or something like that, like after Ultravox or Gary Newman. Is that right?
Well, you're bang on with the period because, as I said, that was kind of my youth. A lot of that sort of post-punk new wave, as they called it, a little bit of new romantic. So you're spot on because just up here, I don't know if I can point to it on the reversed camera. That is actually a photo done by a friend of mine who's a rock photographer of Gary Newman, who you're referring to. So yeah, and I've got my Ultravox albums as well. So yes, I wouldn't deign to put myself in the same league as that.
Well, I thought you were going to say that you actually had a picture with Gary Newman or something like that, like arm in arm, something like that.
Yes, yeah, no, I don't quite have that, but yeah, no selfie of me and Gary, but yeah, that's my period.
He's still touring, isn't he? He's still touring. Yeah. They're still touring out there. I think Ultravox and Gary Newman and all that lot. They're still going out on the boards.
Yeah. Well, we digress, but yeah, mid-year, the lead singer of Ultravox does still go. They did reform Ultravox themselves a few years ago, and yes, I went to see them. Probably like everything post-pandemic, everything is at least 5 years ago nowadays, right? So it was probably more than 5 years ago. Feels like a couple of years ago. And then Gary Newman, yes, he still tours. And in fact, this fall, as they say, he's doing another tour here in the UK. So yeah, it's amazing. What I think amazing about artists like that is all of those artists from that period and and beyond. They're all still making some kind of career. The interesting kind of music through the decades continue. So, as you probably know, all those artists, or most artists that have ever recorded, are still doing something somewhere, which is a crazy thought. But certainly from the 80s, a lot of those acts are still making some money. Maybe not tons of money, but some money. So it's really interesting. So if you love that period, you can still enjoy it now.
The fantastic 80s, yeah. I mean, so the interesting thing is that one of my other guests actually was a keyboard player as well. He's actually put some songs on Spotify, Richard Harris, which he came on the show a while ago. And also I've had some couple of rock stars on the actual show as well. So you're in good company.
Wow.
I've had Tom Morley, who was the original drummer from Scritti Politti, has been on this show.
Another band I like. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. So Green Garside's drummer. Yeah. So there you go. I play guitar. I play electric guitar. I've got my Eddie Van Halen Wolfgang special in Miami Blue. So we've nearly got the G&T Sessions band that we can go on tour. We just need a lead singer.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, Mike Southern, who is the BMWare entrepreneur who's been on the show as well. He was a lead singer when he sold his company. He actually went on to create a band, and he created this alter ego, and he actually went on tour around universities on tour. Yeah, exactly. So there you go, John. If it all doesn't work out, if you want to go, tap into that side gig, make your side gig the main gig. It's all there to take.
Who knew the G&T Sessions would result in a band being formed?
Never say never. So I know you did touch on what you actually do or what you have been doing, but your main gig, not your I don't know which one's the main gig. Yeah, playing keyboards or doing tech marketing in very, very successful companies. But one of the things I suppose we do on the G&T Sessions is because we're taught our audience is is tech founders, it's people that are running tech companies. We're trying to the reason I created it a number of years ago was because this is a resource that I never had when I was in my early career. And I suppose when I was making decisions about being a founder and working in corporates and then working in startups and listing companies on the stock market, etc. So I've kind of created this, this library of content, I suppose, over the last few years. And one of the reasons why I wanted to get yourself on the show is because I really see you as a powerhouse in B2B marketing. We briefly, well, I don't know, we kind of briefly crossed over in that famous German software company SAP back in the 90s. But I know your path has been different to mine. But that's why I wanted to get you on the show, because I think my impression is you've done some really fantastic stuff, and I think people who are listening to this episode can get some real value from it. So that's being upfront about why I wanted to get you on the show, because I think there's some truth bombs and some golden nuggets you can drop on the audience during this episode.
Sure.
So for people who don't know John Watton, can you just give us a bit of an intro, a bit of a pen portrait, and give us a bit of...
Sure. So I guess trying to distill what, again, depressed me is a couple of several decades, some decades of experience into a thumbnail sketch. But we talked a bit about my music. So when I was kind of coming out of school, I wasn't musically gifted enough to make a career from that, but I was definitely more of a science nerd, a bit of a technology nerd.
Okay.
And I had this sneaking, I remember, I don't think I was particularly prescient, but I had a sneaking suspicion that computers may be a good career to get involved in. So,
there's no future in it. There's no future in tech.
So I did sort of sciences, at school, and then I did a computer science degree. So, and after that, decided that I neither wanted to solder microprocessors or program ever again, but love the application of technology and kind of the use cases of technology. And then I guess since then, my career has always been in software. It's 90% B2B, although I've worked in some brands with some B2C offerings, or I've worked in the B2B parts of mainly consumer businesses, which we can talk about in a bit, which is really interesting learning. And I started out really more in sort of technical sales roles. And if you were to ask me, maybe 15 years ago, I would say my career has been 50% technical sales and 50% marketing. Of course, now it's like 75%, 80% of my career I've been in marketing, and about 20% in sort of technical sales roles. And so I was in some technical sales roles, and I got really interested in the opportunity to be involved in maybe could we grandly call it the strategy or the more medium to long-term view of a business? Whilst a lot of sales roles are very much about, delivering value to the customer and matching what you have to offer to a customer's problems, the reality is a lot of sales roles are just about making the number and doing whatever you can to make the number. And so that wasn't really something that intellectually, kind of challenged me. So I had a belief that marketing would give me that opportunity, and spoiler alert, yes, it did, but it's quite a popular popular route, in a lot of technology companies where having an understanding of the technology, having understanding of sales, customer problems suits you very well to marketing, because you're just coming at it from a different angle. You're trying to simplify a technology story for a group of customers or prospects, and you're trying to talk to them in their language aligned to the problems that they're facing, and that you have a solution that is more appropriate than anyone else. So since then, I've been in a range of marketing roles in big and small companies. You and I worked at SAP. I've worked at Oracle, Microsoft. I'm currently at VMware. I also worked in more smaller businesses. I was a CMO of a startup for a good few years, and I've always seen careers as opportunity to flex different muscles, and not necessarily like a sort of predictable progression, which is, I don't know, you go bigger companies, and you expand your role, and you take on management and people. I've always approached any opportunity that I've taken as, is this something interesting, challenging? Does it add to my skills? So, for a lot of people, I've kind of gone from big to small, back to big, back, to medium size. But it's really just been the opportunity. Yeah. Well,
I was going to ask you about that. So there's this thing about, strategy. It's like, does it emerge or is it planned? What would you say on that? Is it in your trajectory? What have you found?
My strategies for my career, or strategies for a
company? For example, I've toggled between large, very large, down to small, back to large, down to small, and now I'm kind of in a certain sector now. But I'm in comedy and technology. Figure that one out. But I suppose did you plan? Did you see you planned it, or did it just emerge in front of you and you evaluate it? It sounds like it's the latter rather than the former. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and listen, we've been through some rocky roads in technology, and so you and I have both been through .com boom, .com bust, financial crisis. We've been through recessions. I mean, that's also been a blessing now, because you're more able to cope with the downs as well as the ups, and you've had the experience to go through mergers and acquisitions, tough times. But broadly underlying, I feel very blessed to be in technology, because there's always opportunity here, and it doesn't stop. So it also means that because of the brands that I've been lucky enough to work with, I also get approached a lot. So, and it's no different to anyone else in my sort of situation. So I'm not saying it's particular to me, but that means that it's not like, the first thing comes along and I go, okay, yeah, that looks interesting. Let's take a dive. I am making a calculated, 90% of what comes my way, I'm not interested in, and it's the one or two. Then you think, okay, that matches something. I've been around the block a bit now, so I don't need to do the same thing again and again. So, does it bring together threads from the things I've done in the past in an interesting and different way? And I don't know about you, Andrew, but more and more is, do I want to work with these people? Is the team a good one? Do I get a good feel about the culture? You're often meeting several people. Does it seem like, we're going to enjoy the ride? We're focused on, delivering against some corporate objectives, but is this going to be something which is going to be enjoyable and rewarding? And that's more and more kind of, you probably know this as well.
Is it going to be,
make decisions?
Is it going to be fun?
Yeah.
Is it going to be fun?
I mean, you kind of come full circle in your career. I think possibly when you leave university and you're early on, you know, most of us aren't really thinking about that career straight off the bat. Maybe more and more people are, but you know, with all the debate now around the younger generation coming in and work not being the priority necessarily, they'll work hard, but it's more about facilitating, you know, their life, and it's a part of their life, but it's not defines their life, which is a big shift from when I started. You know, people just want to, when you're younger, just enjoy yourself because it's not so materially the thing that, you know, drives you. Some people it is. And I think you come full circle when you're later on in your career, you know, in the golden years of your career, Andrew, you know, you come back to that. Is it going to be fun? Am I going to enjoy myself?
Speak for yourself,
well,
John. Speak
I
for
know,
yourself, John.
I know.
I'm still in my 30s. I'm going backwards.
I know you were an intern when we met, right? If I remember. In the 90s. I
was in my crib. Yeah. I was in my crib. I was in the cradle. Yeah, I was in the crib.
Well, and so, yes, it is a glib thing to say, but I think, you know, am I going to have fun with this? Because, you know, with the best, you know, I don't need to take the same old role. So VMware is a good example. That's where I am now. I lead the European marketing. It's a company on a big transformation. You know, it's going through a transformation to SaaS and subscriptions. It's moved from, I mean, if anyone knows VMware, because it's a very technology-focused offering, it doesn't really make it into sort of the business audience, but it facilitates a lot of amazing things for its customers. But if anyone does know it, it knows it as a virtualization company. But you know, like a lot of companies, the portfolio is a lot bigger. It's, you know, we're now very much in the multi-cloud, cross-cloud kind of world, really interesting things moving beyond the data center, which a lot of people may know us for. So that was a really interesting brand opportunity, business shift opportunity. And so, you know, so bringing that together has been really was the impetus and really what's interesting about working for the company.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, you know, VMware is a legend in the tech industry, but probably not as well known. But it's kind of like it's a foundational business for lots of other businesses. You know, they rely on it. It's like how do you keep running? Yeah. I mean, the thing is, my question would be, I mean, not to follow this in a certain pattern, but have you noticed some patterns? I mean, I presume you've kind of built your own kind of like roadmap in your own head, or you've kind of like you kind of like go into these new businesses or these new brands, and you kind of assess where they are, and maybe the headline of what you think it's going to be like is not where it actually is. Yeah, and I suppose it's then, depending on the size of the organization, you then got to work out how do you make impact in a kind of a reasonable time frame. I suppose that's the kind of, I suppose, is that your secret sauce you've worked out in marketing?
Well, so I mean, let's take the last few. I've worked at Adobe. I've worked at a company called Yext, again, known in its niche, should be known a much more wider. And I worked at VMware. Typically, all of these brands, and you know, going back beyond that, are brands that are wanting to drive transformation, right? So they're not startups. They've built a strong customer base. They've probably built, you know, strong awareness and loyalty, maybe with, you know, a group of customers which they feel should be much bigger. And so the business is on a transformation, and kind of aligned to that is marketing's on a transformation as well. And so typically, most over the last 10, 15 years, most leadership roles I've had in marketing is really about injecting a few things into the marketing function. We kind of smile about it now because of the pandemic, but it is coming back, I think, gradually into B2B marketing. So as I said, I'm more in B2B. Is pre-pandemic, B2B marketing was very heavily reliant on events. The feeling was, you know, to be successful, to build that story, to build that connection, you have to do it face to face. Of course, over the pandemic, that got totally wiped out. And then, you know, you would think,
well, just to point out, your events that you've been seeing on LinkedIn and various other places, I think need to like bolt on, you know, Cardiff Arms Park to Wembley to probably the Etihad, yeah.
Right. Yes.
To St James's Park, just to get enough people, just to get enough space to get all the people that get into it. Because They're pretty big, your events you run now, aren't they? It's pretty massive.
And they're in the mix. So first of all, the shift to digital, I think combined with that is data, putting data into the marketing decision process. And so typically, the transformation in marketing is using data, to drive some insights and to make decisions based on those insights, and using the full mix. I mean, the amazing thing is, and when we were talking it before we started, the ingredients that we have now in marketing, I wouldn't, they're not unlimited, but they're so diverse in terms of how we reach audiences and build affinity and build a connection and keep customers happy. All the digital channels, all the new channels, yes, in-person stuff, even many things haven't gone away, which I quite like. You sort of go back when I first started, and there's about 3 or 4 things you could do. You could have an event. To get people an event, you would send a paper invite in the post. You could do a bit of telemarketing. You had a bit of PR and press going through the media, and you may send a few faxes, and that was about it. Now
send a few pigeons, yeah.
So now the challenge is, and what I love is that as well is those in no way were any sort of golden years. I don't ever look back at marketing 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago and think that is the golden age of marketing. Now is the golden age of marketing, just because of the ability of what we can do, and using all the channels to get the best return on your marketing dollars, pounds, or euros. And that's kind of the third thing is, in these businesses, how do you transform marketing to align to the business transformation, and how do you use marketing to scale up to drive growth, right?
I've just got a new idea now. You could rebrand marketing, call it roulette.
Roulette. Well, that's what we're trying not to do.
You placing bets, aren't you? You're placing bets on different types of initiative to try and get the best return. Is that right?
Exactly. And the difference now versus, 25 years ago or whatever, is the bets you're placing are quite small, right? Because through digital, you can try things out. You're always trying things out in organic search, paid search, email. It's relatively no or no cost. So you're not betting the house on, 27 red or whatever. You're betting, $5, 10 euros, because you're able to try these things out. So in some respect, the mindset you should have as a marketer is, placing some bets, seeing which ones win out, going with that one, trying some other things. We should always be testing. We should always be trying different things, because that's how you get the extra point of differentiation against your competition, and also would you cut through.
Would you say that you kind of, it's like an agile? Do you do sprints? Would you say you do a sprint then? You do like an experiment definition, then you look how you're going to measure it, and then you do a sprint, and then you get the feedback, and then you iterate. Is that kind of how you do it? Or?
What has changed with marketing is we used to sort of work in sort of campaigns, and we used to sort of work in, okay, we want to target these customers with this offering, and then we'd look on our calendar and say, when have we got a spare slot? We've got some time in November. Okay, well, let's schedule it for there. And you do some campaign and do some outbound stuff and maybe some events and so on. Of course, over the last, 15 years or so, we've had the advent of marketing automation technology that kind of sits there, always on, nurturing customers, feeding them with the right information based on their behaviors, understanding their behaviors and delivering an expert action, and doing it without a marketer sitting over it and pressing buttons. So it is a much more agile thing. To some respect, yes, you still have to think in terms of a plan. You still need to have some placeholders. But a lot of what we do now is just, as you said, is agile in the sense that it's just sitting there. Like our keyword bidding and all key phrase bidding and all our paid stuff. It's the algorithms are automatically doing it for us, and we come back and we see which has worked, which hasn't worked, and so a lot of those advertising systems are really doing it as agile. So definitely we need to get in a much more agile basis. We got dashboards that we can look on, certainly monthly, probably weekly, sometimes daily in terms of what's happening. So yes, it definitely has changed to much more of daily, weekly sort of sprint basis versus a quarterly, biannual kind of campaign basis.
And do you think that's great? Thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's what I was perceiving, and that's what I've seen elsewhere as well. But I mean, in terms of the structure, because you're running a whole region for a very big brand, for example. And you've done global CMO roles as well. I know before Chief Marketing Officer roles. So do you see that there's also been an evolution on the people and the skills and the structure of what you have to put in place as well? Has that been had to be transformed as well, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the overused phrase, is integrated marketing, right? So, of course you have people who specialize in certain things, but every marketer needs to understand how the specialism they have kind of connects to others. So, to run a let's say we run a really great event. It's not good enough just to have an events team who are only thinking about running the event on a certain day and, do amazing execution and deliver the best event ever. That event has to be connected, obviously, to digital promotion. To your point, we don't hire extra stadiums to manage capacity. We have people live stream, and all those sorts of things. Needed to think about how we use different channels to get some of the content out. And then, an event is no longer just a single day or days. It's okay, what runs up to it and what runs after it. So how do we use that content and reach the people who weren't able to make the event, even if it was a huge event? We do some big multi-thousand person events. And so, you needed them to think about, okay, can we take the content that we have in an event? First of all, can we record it? And then can we, box it up? Let's make like a Netflix box set, that people can binge watch, or then we can feed that out in digital programs in the next 2 to 3 months and get people to sign up to a series of content. Can we turn it effectively into like a podcast and deliver the content in different episodes and all those sorts of things? So the sorts of marketers we need now is, yes, we probably need some deep specialism, but they need to be able to connect that specialism to maybe other specialists. So this idea of like the T-shaped marketer, right? Depth of experience, but a full appreciation of integrated marketing, because really to get the best out of any marketing thing, whether it's a piece of content, an event, an email, doesn't really matter. It's really the multiple touch points that we know, build a better connection and drive results, whether it's engagement or pipeline or leads or whatever you're measuring. And so you need that sort of more rounded ability. So that has changed, definitely. And I think at the same time, although I look for specialism, we don't need people who are specialized in specific tools. They need the skills to assimilate tools, because the tools in marketing change, right? Do you remember during the pandemic, everyone had to have a Clubhouse account and run audio social media, right? So if you chase the shiny thing, this year's shiny thing next year, is going to be TikTok, and next year it's going to be something else, and it was Twitter, and all the tools kind of change. It's understanding some of those overarching principles in terms of how does this contribute to the mix? What is the ROI? How does it? All those things are more important than knowing the ins and outs of a specific tool, which do come into play. But if you chase the shiny thing, you're in danger of then having to rehire a whole bunch of people the following year for the next tool.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's like it's ever changing, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, I do have a Clubhouse account. I did go on some Clubhouse audio things during the pandemic.
We all did.
Guilty.
We were young and naive.
We were young and naive. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think just triggered in my head when you were talking was, I suppose it's like the thing that people say that every company is now a software company. The Mark Andreessen quote. What I was thinking when you were talking about was, does that mean that every software company is now a media company? It's like, I've got my own TV channel now. I've got my own TV station, effectively, the G&T Sessions, that publishes, broadcasts the world. We're not doing this live, but obviously I've done a few live episodes. It's kind of like that evolution, isn't it, of what you actually have as a capability, and it's a lot more multimedia. It's a lot more. There's a lot more dimensions to it. That's kind of what the complexity, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that is never true in marketing is that all of your problems will be solved by more people and more money, because I've had much more money and much less money, and it's how you use that, people and money to achieve that. And so if you're lucky enough to have a strong brand proposition audience, then the nirvana, right, is your own media, right? Is your own properties. Classically, the website. If you're a brand like Adobe, who have worked for Microsoft, your websites are one of the top 10 trafficked in the world, right? Do you need to be going out and trying to get onto other websites? Well, yes, it'll be part of the mix, but you have a very strong own property. So yes, I mean, you need to think about that. I mean, marketing's been through its sort of fads over the last 20 years. At one point, it was really, vogue to talk about content marketing. You need to think about content marketing strategy. And that is true. You need to be kind of, fresh. You need to be relevant. You need to be, current. And so you need to think about how you're refreshing all your content and how that, is out there and delivering value. And so to that extent, I guess, we are thinking like publishers or media companies, because you need to think about, your kind of, your front of stage and how that's evolving and changing. If customers are coming to your website all the time and it's not changing, it gives a certain impression about the brand, right? It's kind of the latest post from a year ago, or, nothing's been updated. The look and feel is the same. And all these things you need to think about.
The lights are on, but there's no one home, kind of thing.
Yeah, and we've been very successful with VMware in terms of keeping up like some YouTube content and refreshing it and getting multi-million kind of engagement with it. And you just need to think about that. What is our editorial schedule? What is it we want to say? How are we relevant to what's going on in the market? And and how do we get that out there? So versus that more internal view, which is okay, what's our when do we have a gap in our calendar? Or, it's not kind of related to anything that our customers are kind of experiencing. So I think it is true, and that's been a shift. Yeah,
putting yourself in the customer's shoes. What are the things that they're going to kind of keep them awake at night, kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly, and doing that fresh and regularly and keeping up to date. So yeah.
So one of the other things, it's just, I mean, thanks for going through that. I mean, it's just the other thing that just triggered in my head was one of my very famous. I mean, apart from yourself, one of my other favorite marketeers, and you probably know this guy. He's based in New York, and he's quite vocal. He's a guy. He's written a few books. He's a guy called Scott Galloway.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know Scott.
I do. Yeah.
And obviously, during the pandemic, actually, I did quite a few. I did the brand sprint with Section 4 and a few other brand strategy sprints with him. Brilliant. I mean, as I've mentioned on previous episodes, it's the largest Zoom call I've ever been on. It's probably, I think it was 2,800 people on one Zoom call with him.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was just
everyone on mute.
Well, it was quite funny. He was bringing people on stage at the end, and I won't go into how he was selecting who was coming on stage, but it was very, very interesting the way he interacted with people. But anyway, that's for another episode. And obviously, Scott, if you're listening, I'd like you to call me. Yeah, like get you on the a three-way. We can get John, Scott, and myself on a marketing masterclass. But one of the things that he talks a lot about is brand. So I suppose what's your view on brand? I mean, because you think about when the CFO looks at the marketing budget and you're looking at the allocations. What is your? Do you believe like a bit like a do you believe in the brand and it's got to how do you invest in the brand? How do you build the brand? Any perspective on that?
Yeah. So. It would be remiss of me to say that I don't think I'm in the same stratosphere as Scott Galloway, but I do enjoy his Pivot podcast and Prof G podcast.
Come on!
You're very, very kind, but I'm just a humble client-side marketer, as they call it. Not a professor of marketing, but yeah, brand. I mean, it's really interesting in terms of I think more than I've seen, for example, Adobe, I led kind of the global brand project a few years ago and how we activate that. We definitely then were thinking much more around the entire customer journey, right? So often brand is thought of kind of to use, the marketing vernacular, top of funnel, right? And even the funnel's an outdated idea, but kind of the way in which we make first contact with prospects and classically that's thinking, okay, advertising, sponsorship, people see us mentioned on a billboard somewhere, and that's how they first get to hear about us. Of course, as that may not be the case. It may be a trade show. They're walking the aisles of a trade show and they see someone like Adobe or SAP or VMware or any of the places I worked at and go, oh, I don't know who you are. To sort of to caveat it, more and more unlikely that people go to these trade shows, but there still are the forums where they have it. So your brand can show up in many different places. They can show up, as we know, as I know, right? When I'm opening my inbox in the morning, I'm hearing from many different companies that I've never heard of before who are trying to sort of make a connection with me. So it's email. So first of all, we and definitely VMware, we think more about sort of brand to demand, as it were, which is, all the way down the funnel. How do we show up to people who don't know us, show up to people who may know us but don't know what we do, show up to people who know what we do but have maybe, the sort of traditional view, and we've got a more contemporary offering now, and then how do we take people down and then how do we identify those who have a real need to talk to us and then engage in a commercial conversation? And we do that directly. So, we think about that directly. And also we have a very strong channel. So how do we do that with our partners as well? So first of all, I think the idea of, when people say brand, they think of advertising, right? They think of, billboards or airport takeovers and things like that. I think that the idea of brand has changed. So there's the activation of the brand and the kind of campaigns. And then there's just the concept of brand is being consistent in, how you describe what you do, how you convey your values, if that is important. I would say it is very important, but some brands, it's not just, this is what we do, here's how we describe it quickly, and we need to be consistent across the many thousands of touch points. So I am a big believer in spending a lot of time on brand to get those things established and then being consistent. And then in many companies I've worked for in B2B, you may have a self-service business, but most are, the go-to-market is very much on a direct sales model and a partner model. So you have a direct sales force who are speaking to customers and prospects, and they need to be enabled to tell the brand story in the right way. And so I think I'm a big believer in spending time on the brand. I think a believer in making sure all your channels are consistent, including a sales force and a partner channel. And, I think what we try to do, and your question about sort of funding is, the cake of marketing needs all the ingredients to make the cake. If you take out, the flour or the sugar or the raisins, it's difficult to take those apart. So, the cake requires brand investment. It requires, classic demand investment. You need to show some of your activities are generating pipeline and get a good return. But you can't do those things without the thing at the front and the story around it. So typically look at a sort of media mix kind of analysis that sort of shows the impact of that. But I think, the reality is, nowadays is that you're never going to build brand awareness through an advertising program. You just don't have enough dollars so it's never going to be a huge part of your spend, but it's an important part of your spend. It's more about the other things I talked about, being consistent across the brand.
Yeah, it's not like a red or black kind of thing. You've got to place them on different numbers and different combinations, haven't you, to try?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's always a mix, and it's presenting that mix. If you take things in isolation, then it's very very different. But if you've got it depends on the personality, right? You know that in terms of any funding you want in business, it depends on it's not necessarily the case that a CFO doesn't get it. Some CFOs go, yeah, we need to be doing this. I want us to see us on a racing car or whatever it is and approve it. And some, you've got to go through the numbers. But it comes back to my experience in marketing, more and more is, really making sure that we are the experts in marketing. As you know, Andrew, in any business, marketing is one of those functions where everyone thinks they can do it and they know what the answer is. And so we don't want to, give up that responsibility. So having data and insights gives you a really strong position to say, okay, we understand the impact of what we're doing. Here's the sorts of results we have. And we are the trustees of that data and information. And so take out some of the subjectivity and put in a bit more objectivity. So that's again something that over the last couple of decades I've worked hard with the team to say, you go into these conversations where there's a debate around what we should and shouldn't do. If we have the data, we're much better positioned to make the right recommendation. I'll give you an example. If you work with a sales organization, everywhere I've been, the answer is always an event, right? We need to reach these customers. We need to generate leads. We need to create awareness. We need to accelerate a deal. We need to close a deal. We need an event. No one ever says we need a blended mix of some LinkedIn advertising. We need some email nurtures. We need to do some stuff on Instagram, whatever it is, kind of joking, but, and we know that we would be more successful doing something on paid media. And that's really it is a profession that has expertise and specialism. And I think in many B2B companies, it's kind of, we've kind of devolved that and just are more great at executing. So I think that's also part of the opportunity for marketing, shall I say?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I think it's I mean, that's why I was thinking about roulette when you were talking, because it is a bit like, how do you spread and learn and improve and work out which, for that particular industry or use case or proposition, how do you, what's going to get you best return? But there's obviously some foundational stuff as well. One of the things that also triggered in my head when you were talking was about marketing sales alignment. Because obviously there's been this I've been a VP of sales, like worldwide VP of sales in my career, but then you've got this thing about then, commercial roles that kind of cover marketing and sales. You've then got the CMO role. You've then got the CRO, the Chief Revenue Officer role, and then does marketing work for the CRO? Is it a peer? Any kind of experiences on that you'd like to share about, because there's that thing about what do marketing do, what do sales do, how do you get alignment on that, how do you make sure you're on the same page?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, like anything, it's about establishing that straight up and the kind of handshake, the kind of role we play. Where that gets a bit fuzzy, that's where you have the challenges. Thinking about, it depends what the role of marketing, and I think in every company, almost marketing sits somewhere else, right? Does it, ultimately report to the CEO? Does it report to, a COO? Is it in, is all of marketing in one place? Sometimes product marketing is in a business unit. Demand marketing it can be in sales, it can be in marketing. We then have kind of inbound salespeople, sometimes sit in marketing, sometimes in sales. I think every company has a different model. It is about doing some of the, it reminds me of when we were at SAP. We also talk about people, process, and technology. It's an old thing that we often trot out, and a lot of sales and marketing. A lot of marketing is. And what marketers don't like to do is the process bit. it's really establishing that process and that handshake. So, hands up, that's not necessarily a core kind of skill of marketing. So it's establishing that process and really having that conversation, to be honest, about in that company, what is the role of marketing? In some companies, it's to sort of go out there and spread the word and bring in kind of, contacts into the business. In others, it's very focused on
evangelizing.
Yeah. hair cover. I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of these things. It's where you have a misalignment. Generating pipeline, generating leads, showing the business that's closed because of marketing. You know, the metrics are many, and each business has a different situation. And some businesses, the requirement of marketing changes over the years, depending on where the business is. So marketing could be KPI'd on pipeline one year, next year it's much more about, you know, as you say, evangelism, or vice versa. And so it definitely it's about that. And then really it is about documenting those roles between marketing and sales. And when you do that up front, that's where I've seen the best success. Where you kind of let that slide a bit, that's where, you know, you get some confusion. And then being very very numbers, you know, very clear on those objectives, and use those up front when you do any kind of reviews and so on. So not just jumping into, we had a great this, we did a great that, look at, you know, Lewis, you know, we had great press coverage, whatever it is, starting with, let's just remember what our role is.
What's good, what could be better, kind of thing. I mean, that kind of balance. Yeah,
exactly. So but yeah, it's an interesting thing to, you know, talking about brand and demand and lead generation. And, you know, some businesses have a very strong install base, and it's about working with the account team very specifically on specific accounts, and aligning to an account plan, and helping with, you know.
Oh, you mean like ABM, like account-based marketing company?
ABM. I mean, that's a part of our kind of mix at VMware, and it's a definite hot topic in B2B marketing. And there you're going down to an account specific thing. So each account is different. There's an account goal, and then marketing is basically a tab in an account plan, where, you know, we're helping maybe to extend the reach in the account, reach other divisions and subsidiaries, you know, building out, you know, our contacts in that account in certain, you know, persona groups. Or it can be, listen, we really want to help the customer realize the value of what we have. So it's about getting them to use the amazing technology that they've invested in, and consume it, and you know, activate it. Or it can be, you know, anything in between. So each account can have a different goal, and you have account specific plan for that account.
Yeah, make sure the software is not on the shelf, so to speak, collecting cobwebs. Yeah.
Well, that's what I love about subscription and the SaaS delivery model. It's not about you know, sticking stuff on the shelf. Your revenue doesn't get recognized until your software's used. So moving to an ARR kind of model, you know, I think that's great for everyone, right? So I think obviously it's great for the customer, and I think it's great for the software provider as well, because ultimately you do want the customer to get the most out of it, and so you have a much more you know, value relationship versus we've provided it to you, now, you know, good luck, and we then have to, you know, we have to work with you to make sure that it's utilized. And I think it's a much better way to measure a business.
Yeah, one of my friends who's on an advisory board of a company I'm involved in. He's a very big bank in New York, and he said, "Yeah, there's too many software." He used to be client side, right? He used to work for the bank. He said, "Yeah, there's too many software companies that just used to like drop. It's like a delivery. It's like a Tesco.com delivery. They drop the software at the back door." And they go, "See ya, bye." You know, so it's that thing about how do you help people through that customer adoption and customer success and usage, because otherwise it becomes a very short relationship potentially.
It's transactional, and this is much more, you know, partnership. But I mean, I remember when we used to deliver stuff on you know, DVDs or CDs or whatever it was back in the day, and for the deal to be recognised, you had to get the signature from Goods In, right? The Goods In. To confirm it being delivered to the customer on their site. So you're waiting for the Goods In signature, which is just, you know, seems so, you know, so old-fashioned nowadays, but that's how it was, you know.
I mean, great conversation so far. I mean, I just thank you for sharing so much and so much insight. I mean, it's a big topic, this. And you've been in so many different interesting places. It's some really good stuff to share. I suppose switching it to a slightly more personal thing. I suppose one of the things we talk about is called peaks and valleys. So obviously, it sounds like you've had quite a few peaks and you've had all these brilliant experiences. I suppose if you're talking about valleys, anything that you want to share in that space about what you've learned, something was planned and it didn't work out like that, and it's kind of like it was not a peak, it was a valley. Any ones you'd like to share with the audience today on the episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think you get very invested in things. And I think one of the learnings I had is if it is the right thing to do, then just you feel obliged, right, to do something. You spend time to see it through, and I think I learned a lot about that when I was at Adobe and the CMO handling this. We were working on a project, and you kind of knew it wasn't right, but you spent a bit of money, and in the scheme of a corporate world, it isn't a lot, and things are can regularly, or as we know, things change and shift every. And she just stopped the project, and I think that was a great learning for me. I mean, it was disappointing that the project was stopped, but also now it's just like, look, you need to think at more of a macro level in terms of what this does. So yeah. And I was asked the other day actually about the companies I've been at. Do I ever regret any choices? Because I've been in one situation where I've signed to join a company, and then the week before I join, I'm told that the company's been acquired by a different company, and so by the time I join, I'm joining a different company, and it's not the company I joined, and everything. I've tried to stay positive about what that does to my experience. So I think over the years, when you've been through these different scenarios, high growth, been through the dot-com boom and bust, join companies who acquired, as I just mentioned, just before you've joined. I joined a company just a week before the first lockdown, and never met anyone in my business, and and so all these sorts of things. You roll with the punches. I mean, it sounds a bit cliche, but you just build a resilience that everything has a learning. You'll learn from it, and then you move on to the next thing. And as I've said, I see opportunity, not just a sort of steady kind of upward growth. It's just seeing things that are really interesting and enjoyable. And whether it's at a big company or a small company, or do something regional role or a global role, it's really how does that all piece together. And what I've seen through all these things is everything works out well. Well in the end, I'm lucky to work in this industry. There's a lot of opportunity. There's always new things coming along. So it's always something to learn from. So the valleys, I was very early on taught the valley of redundancy, because the very first company I worked for out of university, I was there for a few years, and we got acquired, and we were all laid off because they just bought the technology and some of the engineers, and everyone else was laid off. So I was first made redundant at the age of 24, 23, 24. And it built my resilience to say, it's fine, it will all be good. There's always something coming up on the horizon. So, yeah, I think I've been in 3 or 4 acquisitions, and they've all been, positive experiences, not even in retrospect, as you go through them. That's what I love about this industry. There's just lots of opportunities.
That's cool. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's a roller coaster ride. So I mean, linking to that, I suppose, what are you most grateful for? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I am grateful, especially from making that choice back in the day to go into this industry and learn along the way. I think I've really benefited from being in software and technology. I've been lucky I've always tried to choose disruptors or innovators. There's a lot of disruption, there's a lot of innovation, and back to our gambling, you roll the dice with some companies, and sometimes they don't work out, sometimes they do. 90% of companies do okay. It's only the 10% that are kind of the rock stars of the profession. So I'm really grateful for being in this industry. I think many things have come together to put me in the position where I am now, which I'm very grateful for. Probably the one decision I'm grateful I made was making that move from sales into marketing back in the day, many years ago. And, we're all blessed with judgment and luck. There's a big dose of luck. One friend of mine said, all these people write, the secret success and business. He said, mine would be very easy. One page, I'd be very lucky. End of book, right? So I think there is always a bit of luck. There's lots of talented people who are plugging away, and some have done very well from it. But yeah, so that's probably the thing I'm most grateful for, is making that decision professionally, and touch wood. Personally, had a good life, no major health scares and all those sorts of things. So I guess, I'm grateful for my health as well, to allow me to stay young, Andrew, after all of these years.
You're the Peter Pan of B2B marketing. That's what I'll call you now. So, so a couple of final questions was about, obviously there's been probably a lot of people listening to this episode, because obviously you're a very, very, prestigious, established person in this industry, and obviously got a lot of experience, and you shared it, a lot on this episode already. Is what would be the kind of top 3 pearls of wisdom that you want to share? If a person was a founder, or another, head of marketing or CMO, or want to get into this kind of space, what would be your kind of your gift to them? Any thoughts around that? What would be the things to think about?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. We've talked a lot about data and using data-driven insights. Don't ever forget that great marketing is a mixture of data and creativity. So there's many buttons we can push to get us in the right place at the right time. But it's what you say and how you say it. A lot of what we have to do is, it hasn't changed since the Don Draper years of men, right? You have to make a box of soap, jump supermarket somewhere. And we have to do that now in a social feed, in an email, whatever. So creativity is an important part. So I would say you've asked me a couple of different personas. If you're a founder and you're looking to invest in marketing, please invest in the marketer that kind of brings those two things together. It's not just about sort of direct response. If I say, right, I've funded this thing, it's Thursday, and then right, get going, and then a Monday. Okay, what leads have we generated? Okay, it's not quite like that. So definitely, embrace that. I think as for fellow marketers, I think the things that I would sort of give them three pills for a fellow marketer. One, yes, we're in industry, in technology that is always changing, and they always say, change is a constant, all that stuff. I would change that slightly and say, as a marketer, you should think about how you're driving the change in your business. What are you doing to change, the business, obviously for the better, and how are you going to drive that change as a marketer? The second is, what curiosity do you have in marketing? I'm always surprised, maybe at bigger companies, how a lot of marketers, they don't have any curiosity in marketing. I think it's an amazing time to be a marketer, because a lot of what we do, is now sort of blurs between our personal and work life. A lot of things that, the way in which we interact with brands and friends and family in personal life, we can bring into into business. And so we should be interested and curious about what's going on in e-commerce, in self-service, in digital channels, whatever, Clubhouse, TikTok. It may not be the right thing, but we should have a curiosity around it, right? And just want to explore it and try it. And it's free to try in our personal lives. And, that's changed a lot. So curiosity. And I think that gambling thing as well, you have to take a risk. And risk used to be a very loaded statement. It used to mean sort of betting your budget on something and crossing your fingers and finding out 3 months later if it worked or not. You should be taking a risk every day with the way in which you spend your marketing. So think about always, that agile, always be trying things out, having things fail, using your budget, in a very constrained way, but regularly taking risks and trying things out. Because ultimately, depending on whichever industry, and if you're in a startup that's trying to create a category, you've got to really break through and stand out. You've got to have some differentiated way to do that. If you're a well-established market with lots of competitors, you've got to find that, 1% extra differentiation, because everyone else is doing what you're doing. They're sending out emails, they've got podcasts, they're doing YouTube content. Everyone is doing it. So how do you sort of, reach the tape, kind of one centimeter before them? So change, curiosity, and risk is what I'd say to fellow marketers, and think about those things.
Fantastic. Yeah, podcast, but obviously the podcasts, they're not as good as the G&T sessions with John Watton, you see. So, they need to listen up.
Never. It's a start. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying, but I'm still learning. So yeah, so I suppose, to wrap it up, thank you so much for coming on this episode. Brilliant. Lots of value. I knew it's going to be a good episode. And I suppose if anybody wants to get in contact with you or learn more or follow you or something like that, what's the best way of doing that? Is there a like Lord John Watton or the Peter Pan of marketing.com or something like that out there as a domain name or something? Or what's the guidance?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Sort of in the current climate, I used to say, follow me on Twitter. I don't do anything on Twitter, So how things change, right? I remember at conferences, we used to put our Twitter handles up and hashtags and say to the audience, connect to the Wi-Fi and please share stuff to Twitter. And we was the main. Now we never say anything like that anymore because people just don't do it. And so probably just connect with me on LinkedIn is probably the thing, which for business is really where I concentrate my time now. I used to have other accounts and other things, but yeah. So just on LinkedIn.
I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say connect with me on Spotify or something. With my music catalog from my, it's like it's like Monty Python. It's like Anyway, we digress. No, thank you so much.
Just good old LinkedIn, Andrew.
Okay, good old LinkedIn. Until that morphs into something new.
Yeah.
Well, no. So thanks for coming on the show. That was John Watton, all-round ace, awesome marketeer, who's been in like the compendium of probably the A to Z pretty much of tech companies. So has worked on their secret sauce and knows what to do and how to navigate marketing. So I'd definitely recommend if you want to learn, follow John and what he's doing, and obviously follow him on with his musical talents as well. So it's good to meet another rock star. And that was Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. Have a lovely day, everybody, and thank you for your time.